Anyway, thank you for being here tonight. Our next presentation is Living with Sitka's Brown Bears. I'm having this image of bears in the woods right now, having a similar meeting called Living with Sitka's Humans. So I know there's a lot of things going on tonight. There's other meetings here in town. I tried really hard to find a good day for everybody to be able to attend, but there's always something going on. There's a basketball game or a wrestling match, and the bear issue is hot right now. So I really didn't want to wait too much longer. And Thanksgiving's next weekend, so here we are. So just want to thank the Centennial Hall staff, Tony, Christian, and John for helping me get this set up. Thanks for Abby for hosting, and for Abby and my program tech, Mikey Kozak Tinsley, really helped me polish up the presentation tonight. And I think we got a really good presentation. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you guys enjoy it and learn something from it as well. So, all right, so a little bit about me. My name is Steve Bethune. I'm the wildlife biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. I've wanted to be a biologist since I was 12 years old. So I'm like one of the few people in this world that's like kind of living their dream. It's a really cool job. I did want to be a professional baseball player, but that didn't quite work out. This was like my second choice. But I spend a lot of time behind the desk driving a computer, but every once in a while they do allow me to get out and do some really cool stuff. I get 2 or 3 helicopter days a year. I get to play with animals. This is a black bear research project that I was part of on Prince of Wales Island. I've done deer mortality, fawn mortality studies. I do work extensively on mountain goats here on Baranof Island. And again, more just really cool National Geographic type of stuff. Crawling in bear dens. I didn't think when I was in college that I'd be giving PowerPoint presentations on how to handle your trash, but here I am, right? So, apparently I made Sitka Memes last week, but of course no one does it better than Gary Larson. Floyd was my supervisor in Ketchikan, so that was a joke that was going around at the time when we were doing our Prince of Wales study. All right, so our goals here today. I do other presentations on more like bear safety out in the woods, but we're gonna really focus on kind of that urban brown bear interface tonight. So just like in town stuff. So I want to help you foster an understanding of what motivates bears to be in our communities, in our neighborhoods. Help you mitigate potential human-bear conflicts and increase our overall knowledge of bear behavior, because the more we know about bears and how they tick is going to help us meet some of the challenges that we have here in town. I really appreciate this quote from John Hechtel, who's a retired fish and game biologist. So what most people know about bears has more to do with the nature of bear stories than the nature of bears. We often see what we believe. So there's these kind of wide-ranging viewpoints of bears that people have. You've got on one end of the spectrum people that think the bears are, teddy bears and Care Bears, just kind of cute and cuddly. They've grown up with stories of Winnie the Pooh and bears. There's no necessarily a respect or a healthy respect and acknowledgement that bears can be dangerous. But then on the other end, you've got these bear stories, this paranoia and the over-exploitation of bears. And it really leads to this really irrational viewpoints of bears. And I really try to encourage people to not have this viewpoint of bears. We live in an amazing place, and I really don't want people's irrational fears of bears to keep them from doing the things that we love to do so much here in town. The hiking and biking and hunting and just going out in the woods, berry picking and stuff. Those are all generally really safe activities, and this is not a typical scenario. This is more typical of the bear encounter you're gonna have out in the woods. A bear doing normal bear things. You see each other, you both go different directions. There's a mutual parting. There's no story on KPA or on the Sitka Sentinel. What I want to do is help you get to the kind of more of the center viewpoint, where you're not fearful of bears, you're not complacent about bears, but you're informed, alert, knowledgeable about bears. And this center approach is going to be much safer, and you're going to be a lot more aware. And let's see, where am I at? It's going to keep you and the bears safer. I deal with some real extreme attitudes about bears here in town. There's kind of a kill 'em all crowd, and there's the they were here first crowd. And I try to get everybody more in that, where I live is more in the center. I can't kill all the bear, even if I decided that was the right thing to do. It'd be impossible, right? And it's just not a viable option. On the other hand, I can't not kill some bears because some of them do pose a public safety risk, and some of them have to be, unfortunately, removed. So we're got to meet somewhere in the middle, right? All right, some fun brown bear facts. Brown bears, this is kind of to help also kind of dispel some misperceptions about bears. Brown bears can actually climb. Their claws are not adapted to climbing like a black bear's claws, but brown bears can use their paws in their claws to actually climb up a tree. So not real common, but they can do it. Bears are capable of tremendous bursts of speed, up to 40 miles per hour. This is like Kentucky Derby speeds for in horse racing. If you're a football fan, you know that professional athletes, football players, and elite level college players, they measure their speed based on their 40-yard dash time. And a really good football player's 40-yard dash time is a 4.4, right? 4.4 seconds for a 40 yards. A brown bear can do a 40 in 2.7. So there's no way you're ever going to outrun a bear. So when I talk about bear safety, especially when I'm talking to kids about bear safety, I just always hammer, never run from a bear. Never run. You're going to invoke a predatory response, and there's no way you can outrun a bear. They can sustain a loping speed of about 20 miles per hour for a couple of hours at a time. So moving long distances for these bears is really, really common. Up to 50 miles a day is not unheard of. And we know from radio collar data that they're excellent swimmers. Even here in town, we know that bears are using all the little islands, bears on Middle Island, Kaziana, Apple Island. We've had bears over on Japonski. I'm pretty sure they're not walking across the bridge, so they got to get there somehow, right? Of course, we all know the brown bear's sense of smell is legendary. It's 7 to 10 times better than bloodhounds, the most robust dogs with the best olfactory sense. They're about 2,500 times better than we can smell. So their whole world is perceived pretty much through their noses. A lot of people think that brown bears have poor eyesight. That's a misperception. Brown bears actually have pretty similar eyesight to us. And probably within bears, there's some variability, just like there's some variability within us too, right? I have 20/20 vision as long as I'm wearing my contact lenses. So bears probably have a little more nearsighted vision than farsighted vision, which if you think about it makes sense because they're feeding and they have to kind of see immediately what's more in front of them. But they do have fairly good long distance sight as well, and we think that brown bears can see in color as well. So their hearing is comparable to ours. They do have a little higher and lower frequency range, but it's pretty comparable to what we hear. And brown bears are long-lived. It's not uncommon for bears to be up to 25 years old. All right, a lot of people ask me, when are these bears going to den up? When are they finally going to go away and we're going to get a little peace around here, right? Well, the short answer is not quite yet. In general, around Thanksgiving is kind of a general standard time where we think bears go into their dens. Females with cubs go in the earliest, sometimes up to middle of October at the earliest. And then some of these bears are staying up clear into the end of December. So we still have a few more days to go. Then an interesting thing about denning is that denning onset is more food related than cold. So we can help put these bears to sleep by removing some of the food resources that we're continually giving them. As long as there is a constant food source for them here in town, it could delay them going into the dens. I think last year we had a bear that we were working on clear into the den. All right, a little bit about brown bear reproduction. This is a really generalized graphic, but it goes to show that in a bear's lifetime, on average, a sow produces 4 cubs that make it to adulthood. So this graphic kind of follows one sow throughout her lifetime. Age of first reproduction is fairly young, about 5 years of age. They have a litter on average every 3 years. On average, they produce 2 cubs. And you can kind of see as they progress through their life, about 4 of those cubs actually make it to 5 years old, and they can reproduce on their own. You'll see on the second bear down, it has average age of harvested adult females is about 10 years old. That's from Game Management Unit 1D over by Haynes. It's about the same here in Sitka as well. So that's another factor we use in trying to encourage the harvest of male brown bears rather than females, because a brown bear sow that's killed at 10 years old has probably only produced 1 cub in her lifetime, and we're really seriously limiting her reproductive potential that could have produced down the road. All right, how many brown bears are there? We estimate about 4,300 brown bears in Game Management Unit 4, which includes the ABC Islands. So I don't just manage Sitka, I manage Admiralty, Baranof, and Chichagaf Island. We haven't done a population estimate in about 20 years. So we do have some kind of dated information, and we're working on trying to see if we can get another population estimate somewhere, either here on Baranof or maybe on South Admiralty sometime in the near future. But for now, this is the population numbers we base our management off of. So how many bears, people ask me, how many bears are in Sitka? That's the $1 million question, right? We've already killed 14 bears here in town, and the calls are still rolling in. So when you factor in that these bears can move up to 50 miles per day, it's really hard to estimate. This one I think I haven't figured out. For example, down on end of Sawmill Creek Road, where we killed twin sows and a large adult male earlier this year. We thought there were twin cubs and an adult male, and a couple days after those bears were dead, we started getting calls about twin cubs and a large adult male. So bears fill in. There's bears that I don't necessarily know about, and so it's really hard to say how many bears are in town. Just a note on hunting. I manage the hunting season based on what's a document called the Brown Bear Management Strategy, which is a comprehensive kind of a multi-stakeholder group document that both consumptive and non-consumptive users came together and came up with guidelines for how to manage both the tourism aspect of brown bears and the hunting aspect of brown bears. So it would be really remiss if I did something outside of the bounds of those kind of agreed upon guidelines. And what they came up with is managing based on 4% of the estimated population can be harvested. And you can see on the left side of this graphic here are the total number of bears and the total number of female bears that could be taken every year in the hunting season based on this management strategy. I will say this includes all human-caused mortality, so not just hunting, but all the offensive license properties, vehicle kills, or, research, poaching. Anytime a person is responsible for the death of a brown bear, it gets added into these numbers. On the right-hand side is the average from 2019 to 2021. I do Memes based on a 3-year rolling average, and this helps kind of smooth out the curves. For example, in 2020, we did not have a spring non-resident brown bear season because of COVID mitigation. So our brown bear harvest numbers went way down. They're higher than normal this year because everybody that didn't go the year before tried to make up for it. So, but on average, you can see we're way below the maximum number of bears that we could take under our hunting regulations. So I hear a lot of people say, well, if we just change the bag limits or we just allow more hunting, there's still bears available for hunting. So I don't think, in my opinion, any changes to the hunting regulations are going to have any significant impact right now on the number of bears that are taken every year. So you can see by these numbers, we're doing really well with our female harvest. Hunters are very selective for male bears. About 85% of our harvest is non-residents that come and they have to be guided. So even if you're anti-hunting here in the room tonight, I just want to say that hunters pay disproportionately a large amount for brown bear conservation through sales of hunting licenses, tags, voluntary taxes on your firearms, ammunition, and other hunting equipment. So brown bear hunters play a huge role in the conservation of brown bears across North America. All right, so we need to talk about some terms before we kind of get into the urban brown bear issues. Habituated bears. These are bears that don't change their behavior in the presence of humans. So these, for example, this is a bear near the Mendenhall Glacier in Juneau. Doing normal bear stuff. There are people nearby, but the bear's just ignoring the people and doing its thing. McNeil River Falls, Annan, places like that, bear viewing places where bears are used to people being there and they don't change their behavior. They do normal stuff. So the habituated bears isn't necessarily a bad thing. But bears access garbage, human-related food, pet food, bird seed, etc. They can quickly become food conditioned. And this would be potentially a dangerous situation because now the bears are associating food with people. You kind of got to think of food conditioned bears. They're kind of like dogs. You give a dog a treat and it'll obey a command, right? You sit, you get the treat, and then it learns that if you say sit, it gets cookie, right? Brown bear, it learns if it knocks over a trash can and gets some food, oh, I'm gonna try that again. So that's what food conditioning is. It's like teaching these brown bears that our garbage cans is potentially a food source for them. And hyperphagia. We're seeing this right now. These bears are in an intense feeding period during late summer and early fall, and they're trying to pack on the pounds in anticipation of their winter denning. I got to tell you a quick story. So one of my colleagues was doing a bear presentation at a teenage boy asked him, do bears ever get full? Does the bear ever need to stop eating? And my colleague says to the teenage boy, do you ever get full? And the answer was, well, maybe, sometimes, for a little bit. So I think that really describes what brown bears are going through. And I guess also teenage boys are hyperphagia all the time. All right, so when we get into trouble, when these hyperphagic bears, totally focused and intent on food and building up as much fat as possible, become food conditioned, and then they become habituated to the presence of humans, and then now we've got a public safety issue. So I really want to emphasize that bears come into conflict with people because we give them a reason to. We give them this endless supply of high-calorie foods. And at Fish and Game, we really try to stay away from the term problem bears or nuisance bears, because they're just bears being bears. It's actually people that are the problem. And these bears are using all the intelligence that they've been created with, all the resources they have to do the best they can with however they can, just to survive. And you look in this top picture, for example, a sow with four cubs. You can just imagine the caloric intake that sow is going to need, not only to go through a full summer of lactation to feed these cubs, but she's got to also pack on enough weight herself to make it through the winter. So tremendous energy needs for these bears. These bears need 20,000 calories or more a day during this hyperphagia period. And so obviously bears don't want to be around people. They're afraid of people. But when you have such a rich calorie reward from some of our garbage and other things, it's going to help them overcome that fear of people. You imagine, so look at some of these numbers here. A bird feeder with the black widow sunflower seeds, the normal size 7-pound bird feeder, that's like enough calories for a whole day. So a bear in just a few minutes time can meet all of its caloric needs for the day, rather than spending hours in a huckleberry patch at 150 calories per pound of huckleberry. And we all know how important salmon are to bears. That's a pretty good number, 4,500 calories in a sockeye salmon. But if you consider it, the bear's got to fish for it, right? So it's using a lot of energy to get that food resource. Whereas, that donut, there's 300 calories and just boom, like that, okay? So even the grease on the pizza box, those kind of things. It's a tremendous amount of calories in our human-related garbage things. A chicken is 4,500 calories. So we have a lot of chickens here in Sitka. And so much easier for a brown bear to catch a chicken in a coop than it is to catch a salmon on the river. So it's literally life and death for these bears. Their only real rule is self-preservation and survival. All right, so I manage based on, we have a policy for human-bear conflict at Fish and Game, and our goals are to prevent human injury and minimize loss of property and the unnecessary loss of bears. And our other goal is to assist the public in avoiding and dealing with these human-bear conflicts while maintaining a sustainable population of bears. So a lot of people have suggestions for how I should take care of the bears. We talked before about the kill them all crowd versus the leave them all be crowd. And I'm really confined within the bounds of this policy. And it's kind of like I liken it to a manager at a fast food restaurant, right? He's got some discretion, professional discretion and ability to make some decisions, but generally when you go into a Dairy Queen, you're not getting the value pack of chalupas, right? You're not going to get a stuffed crust pizza. You know what you're going to get. So it's kind of, I work within a framework and don't really have the authority to go outside of that. All right, so these are the policy guidelines that I work under. Education and prevention is our #1 tool. That's why we're here tonight. That's why I do all the presentations in the schools. That's why I go on Problem Corner. So that's, if we can teach people and prevent these instances from happening beforehand, that's our goal. Another point is that we consider bears in proximity to humans doing normal bear things not an issue. We're going to help rigorously enforce food storage and garbage disposal regulations. I work closely with the Sitka Police Department and help them with these bear issues. The police department has issued approximately 100 citations this year, so they are out working hard on this. And frankly, I wish they didn't have to. The police department has a lot more important things to do than be garbage chasers all night long. There's drug-related issues and other crime that would be much more beneficial to the city if the police could concentrate on those things rather than bears. We do non-lethal deterrence, or what we call aversive conditioning, where we're trying to train these bears that when they come into contact with humans, they have a negative encounter. These are the rubber bullets, the bear spray, honking at them, lights and sirens with the police cars, electric fences, anything that we can do to give these bears some sort of pain or a bad encounter. I even have a taser that we use occasionally on bears here in town. So the problem with aversive conditioning is it's got to happen early in the process with bears, and it's got to be consistent. So as soon as you let up on it a little bit, or the bear realizes, hey, that wasn't too bad, it's worth the pain of a little bit of rubber bullet to get a full garbage can full of food. I'm going to go, I'll go a little more over the next 3 bullet points, because these are kind of hot button topics that people ask me about a lot. Fish and game, we don't translocate bears. We don't dart them and take them to new locations. We generally don't capture bears and send them to the zoo. And orphan cubs generally are left in the wild, or if they're likely to become conditioned bears themselves, or we know they're not going to survive on their own in the wild, they will be euthanized. And we will kill bears if we need to. If there's a public safety concern, if an immediate reoccurring concern for public safety, we will kill individual bears. And then I want to talk a little bit more later about defensive life and property. You'll hear me say DLP a lot. That's what that stands for, defensive life and property. There are regulations that allow members of the public to kill bears in defense of their life or their property. And there's a little bit of paperwork that goes along with that. You're responsible for skinning the bear out and delivering that hide to Fish and Game. I've heard several situations, even just this year, where people had probably really good defensible DLP situations and they chose not to because they were afraid to get in trouble, or they didn't want to go to the trouble of skinning out their bear hide. And I tell people, we'll figure it out. If do you really want to not pay a high school kid $200 to skin this bear for you and have $10,000 worth of damage done to your truck instead? So, think creatively, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. All right, so translocating. People often ask me to take care of bears. They want me to trap the bears, put radio tags and collars on, radio collars on them and ear tags, and move them off to a new location, do all this kind of scientific-y kind of stuff, right? So why don't I just move them? Well, the short answer is it doesn't work. But what I really like to emphasize to people is it's unsecured garbage that's the problem. It's to move a bear is treating the symptom. It's not treating the root cause. And almost like a parenting situation where you allow your kids to experience the consequences of their actions. And so we will remove bears lethally if we need to, but I'm not just going to dart and move every bear that somebody is annoyed with. The next thing is they're going to likely return. Bears have a tremendous homing instinct. And over and over and over, our radio collar data shows these bears covering tremendous distances, large bodies of water, to get back to where they moved from. If they don't come back, their likelihood of survival is low. And I've got this stranger in a strange land. I liken it to if I was unexpectedly dropped in the middle of Times Square without any, I hadn't done any research or any preparation for it. I think I would have a really hard time. And these bears, it's the same thing. They have this experience where they're unconscious and they wake up in a completely different place. These bears spend their whole lives learning their habitat, learning where the food resources are. They've been taught by their mothers. And then you have interspecific competition between the different bears. You drop a new bear into habitat where there's already dominant bears, and it's just a recipe for this bear to not survive. So the other thing is that Sitka is not the only place with bear issues. Buna has bear issues. Bethune has bear issues. Pelican has bear issues. Panicky has bear issues. They don't want Sitka's bears. We don't want their bears, right? They don't want our bears. So it's potentially just transferring the problem to somewhere else. And you can imagine the liability is if somebody got hurt by a bear that Fish and Game had in hand and didn't do something more aggressive. So, so just to kind of wrap it up, it's difficult to catch these bears, even if I decided I was going to move them. It's hard to catch them. It's expensive. It's potentially dangerous to myself and the bears. I work by myself most of the time, so I got to put this bear on the boat, transfer this unconscious bear that can wake up at any moment in rough seas and get it to offload it to a different island. It's just not feasible. So for the most part, translocating bears is really often doable. This is a slide of a bear that was captured and relocated, just to give you an example, in Juneau. It was transported approximately 25 miles out of town and took about a week to make it. You can see it's pretty much on a beeline, right? Orphan cubs. If there's a qualified zoo available, we can transport cubs to these zoos. The problem is there's very few qualified facilities in the country. Bears, as I said before, they're long-lived. They do very well in zoo situations. So there's actually not a lot of demand for brown bears in zoos across the country. We kind of, before the season starts, we get a list every year of facilities across the country who are eligible to take bears. And for example, this year we had no available facilities. So I knew going into this year that any cubs that we came across that would not be able to go to the zoo. Again, they're left in the wild if there's no zoo, or the humane thing to do in most cases is to euthanize them. All right, so we're getting into our urban bear issues now. The biggest cause of human-bear conflict is garbage, and teaching bears to associate humans with food. And the number one attractant is garbage. There are other attractants in town. I'm not saying garbage is the only thing. There's lots of smells. There's lots of things going on here in town. But garbage is really the driver for the issues that we're having. Quite simply, garbage kills bears. All right, what's going on in Sitka this year? This is a graph of defensive life and property kills, agency kills. The slight difference between agency kill, a DLP would be if a homeowner killed a bear that they thought was threatening their life. Agency kill is when myself or the troopers or the police are a public safety concern and we just go out and target that bear. By far, the most bears ever killed in Sitka, at least in the last 40 years. We've killed 13 bears this year, depending on how you count it. This does not include any vehicle kills. This is just actually people deciding to kill a bear. I'm not saying this is totally accurate. I know that back in the 80s, early 90s, bears were getting killed in this town. They just weren't necessarily getting reported. So attitudes are a lot different in Sitka in 2021 than they were in 1980. You had a pulp mill going. You had a population that was more blue collar, conservative, kind of the we'll take care of this issue ourselves kind of crowd. I've heard, we used to have a landfill, and I've heard the stories of, oh, the bear came in the landfill, we just kill it and roll it over into the burn pit. So lots of stories about people that, if we just saw a bear, we'd kill it. There's reports of the logging camps back in the logging days of, the Nacosina camp versus the Catlayang camp, see who can kill the most brown bears, and the numbers are staggering. So there's a lot of different things going on back in the 80s and 90s than there is now. But everybody's asking me, why this? What's going on in 2021? And again, another $1 million question. If I knew the answer to that, if there was one specific thing, we could target that one specific thing and try to address it. But interestingly enough, if you look at that graph, 2016 is my first year as a biologist here in Sitka. Since I've been here, we're averaging 4 to 5 ELPs per year. The previous 10 years, less than 1. So I don't know if I'm doing anything different, not necessarily, but it is what it is. We're not the only town that's having bear issues. In 2018, Puna had 14 ELPs. You probably have heard about Haines last year. Haines had 28 ELPs last year. So we're not alone in this issue. I just don't know why 2021 has been the year for Sitka and brown bears. People say, well, fish runs are natural foods. Indian River this year, the salmon run was actually above average. And the berry crop this year wasn't spectacular, but it was reasonable. I don't think it wasn't a failure by any means. And then you probably remember our herring was just off the hook this spring. So there's plenty of natural foods. I don't think that's the reason that we're having such a spike in bear activity. Our fish and game biologists, myself included, estimate that if people didn't leave their garbage out or other attractants for bears, a vast number of the bear calls would go away. We have a bear ordinance here in town. I'll talk about that in detail, but I think if we all abided by that ordinance, our bear situation would become immensely better. I think there would still be bears in town. They'd still be moving around our neighborhoods, but they wouldn't be cruising looking for food. So if you want a safe neighborhood, you've got to keep your garbage inside and secure. And then if you think about it, the garbage itself can be unsafe to the bears. We've all seen the scats, right, on the cross trail of the plastic bags in the perfect shape of a bear's large intestine, right? Those bags can plug a bear up and cause some real issues. Of course, there's glass shards in your garbage, metal shards, all kinds of caustic chemicals. So, and then we know about the bear, obviously, this year that had the paracord around its neck. That was an awful situation. And my speculation is that there's just a loop of cord in somebody's garbage, and the bear happened to get it, unfortunately, around its neck. So, all right, let's see if I got a video here. Let's see if it works. This is a day in the life of a Juneau black bear with a GoPro. So you can see from that video, some bonanzas, right? That 25-pound bag of bird feed, that's like nearly a week's worth of calories for that bear, all in one shot. And so we've got to keep our attractants out of reach of bears. And so this is kind of what else besides garbage are attractants in town. pet food, as we talked about the bird feeders, chickens are becoming more and more popular every year across the country, and in Sitka is no different. In some cities, chickens have surpassed garbage as being a main attraction. Then we're real fish centered here in Sitka. We've all got our summer fish fillets and stuff to get rid of, so that can be a big attractant for bears as well. So some things you can do if you feed your pet outside, don't do it cafeteria style. You know, give your dog their bowl, they eat, they're done, you take the bowl inside. Don't leave food out just for a long period of time. Bird feeders, the birds don't need supplemental feed during the summertime. There's plenty of stuff for birds. We recommend replacing bird feeders with bird bags. They attract the same number of birds, the same number of different species, and obviously nothing for the bears to get out of that. Livestock, I tell people if you've got chickens and you don't have an electric fence around your chicken coop, I tell people straight up, it's not when, it's not if, it's when. And so I go to people's house and the bear hit their garbage or their chicken coop the night before, and I tell them your win was last night. So if you have chickens, if you have ducks, rabbits, goats, we have a few people with goats here in town, you've got to have electric fences around those things or you will lose those animals to ground. Again, this is just a flyer. We have copies of this at Fish and Game to help you remember. Also, I want to mention we have a bunch of flyers on the back table back here, so all kinds of information about bears that you can feel free to take. I'd love to start seeing some of those stickers randomly around town. I get asked about weird attractants all the time, so I thought I'd just throw a slide up on there. Everybody knows if you leave your four-wheeler out in the woods, the seat gets eaten, right? It's because the insulation, the vinyl on that seat has formaldehyde in it, and that formaldehyde off gases, and apparently I just learned this myself, formaldehyde smells like ants. And we don't necessarily have a lot of ants here in Sitka, but bears are still keyed in on insects, and I think there's probably something going on there attracting. So your hot tub covers, your ATV seats, even within refrigerators and freezers, the insulation inside those has this formaldehyde that's off-gassing the smell. Petroleum products, so any like plastics, right? You can't go for a beach comb on the high tide line and find a piece of plastic that doesn't have bear teeth marks, right? So there's something in that plastic that's attracting them. Citronella candles and the bug spray, that's a really attractive smell. And really any like air fresheners, candles, lotions, those kind of things can be an attractant for bears. And then the most fun one is everybody talks about diapers. Why these bears going after diapers? And you got to get out of this anthropomorphic thinking that that it's poo. For a bear, it's undigested food because we don't process all the nutrients and calories that we ingest. So there's tons of caloric and nutritional value in those diapers for those bears. And then you add in all the scents and fragrances that they put in these diapers, and you can see why they potentially have a big attraction for bears. All right, I want to touch on the city and borough of Sitka bear attraction nuisance ordinance. This one's 9.24.010. And this is a 3-page long document, so I'm obviously just hitting the 60,000 foot viewpoint here. But the ordinance states that no owner or person in control of property shall cause or allow the creation or maintenance of a bear attraction nuisance. And really the gist of this ordinance that I really want to drive home with people is just you can't put your garbage out until the morning of trash pickup. So when it's your refuse pickup day, that's when your can should be on the curb, not the night before. And I see it over and over. We'll kill a bear on Peterson Street on one day, and the next evening, people's trash is ready for the next day. It's frustrating. So there are fines associated with this. In addition to before the first fine, the police are giving everybody a written warning. So there's a lot of education, a lot of steps going on here before we get into these big fines. And it's a $50 fine. After you get that first written warning, it goes to 100, then 200, then a mandatory court after that. Now, unfortunately, putting people on the pocketbook is sometimes the only way to get people to comply and think about this. Right, so here's some pictures from my neighborhood. People putting their trash out the night before, and this is what happens. I like to show this picture to highlight, we have a really good recycling program here in Sitka. There's a lot of stuff in this trash can that could have been recycled. So it's just kind of getting you thinking about ways that you can reduce the actual trash. I have a family of 4, and it's very uncommon for us to have more than one, maybe, or trash. We're doing our recycling, I actually have a burn barrel, so I'm burning my paper and cardboard, and we don't eat out a lot, so we don't have a lot of styrofoam and stuff. But you can see this person can kind of really reduce the amount of smells and attraction in that garbage. This is a creative attempt to keep the garbage out of the bear's reach that failed. And then a lot of people do modifications to their garbage cans to try to make them bear resistant. I appreciate those efforts. And not everybody has garages and sheds, and so people come up with these creative ideas and straps and bungee cords and latches to try to secure their garbage can. But if you do this, if you overfill them, you're defeating the purpose, right? Stray dogs are going to get in. I get people that call the night after a windstorm and say, "Oh, the bears got into my trash." Well, no, the wind was blowing 30 miles per hour. Leave your trash can over. So if you're going to do any of these kind of modifications, be smart about it, right? We'll be looking into bear-resistant trash cans as part of my goals going forward. But obviously, there's no such thing as a bear-proof garbage can. Given enough time and effort, these bears are going to defeat even specifically. But we're going to do some research. There's some new technology out there, some new cans, and we'll see if we can come up with something that works better for Sitka. Right, some things you can do around your house to help keep your home safe. I want to emphasize that your home, your property is your kingdom, right? It's your domain. And we don't want the bears to associate people with, we want bears to think that people are not safe. You know, we're not, what's the word I'm looking for? Yes, I just want to encourage you, if a bear comes on your property, you should leave. So make that bear associate people with an uncomfortable experience for them. We don't want bears to get comfortable around us and feel like we're safe to be around. So some things you can do specifically: open up your line of sight. This means taking down unnecessary brush around your house, eliminating places that bears can use for hiding and kind of skulking around. Install motion-sensitive lights. And then I recently just read about these guard radio or an electric watchdog. They're actually motion-activated dog barking. I don't know what else to call it. But, so, and then think about a guard radio would be like putting your radio on a timer, so that it's a constant. Put it on some talk radio station, so if there's constantly somebody talking. The bear doesn't know they're at the radio. It's just here's the person talking. Next one, keep your doors closed. You know, people call me, hey, there's a bear down in my garage. Yeah, the garage door was open. So I responded to a house a few weeks ago where I heard dogs going on. And I thought, well, that's a sure sign that maybe there's a bear in there. No homeowner was there. Nobody's home. And the garage door was left open, presumably so that their dogs could kind of go in and out throughout the day. And then, of course, their garage has got the pantry and full of food resources. And I thought that's just a recipe for disaster. Bears have figured out how to work leather doorknobs that are leather. So if you have leather doorknobs, I would really highly recommend that you change them to round doorknobs. Now, bears don't have opposable thumbs; they can't do this. So that can help keep the bears from actually opening your door. The critter getter, that's a motion sensitive device that emits a siren, strobe light. It's really obnoxious and it does a really good job of scaring the bears. Just be smart about this. It also works when the neighbor's cat walks by in the middle of the night. So be cognizant of your neighbors who decide to install one of these. But that can be at least a temporary solution to hazing bears. And electric fences. We're going to talk a little bit more about electric fences. They work and they are extremely effective as a bear deterrent. And unwelcome mats. These are really popular in the interior for people who have summertime cabins, and it's putting plywood all the way around whatever you're trying to protect with nails. You know, hundreds of nails putting them through the bottom of plywood. The bear's not going to want to step on that. And then there's also unwelcome mats that you can electrify, and it's a little more advanced technique that you can actually have seen these at fish hatcheries and places, and where if the bear actually steps on the metal crate, you can get an electric shock. Clean the scene. These are the bear caches. You know, the bear snatches a bag of garbage from your hand and it runs off into the woods and it leaves a trail of garbage. And then if you hike down the woods, you find all of this mess. So those are the bears kind of like eating areas, and they feel comfortable taking the garbage there. So it's really important that you clean those up if you find them. If you're uncomfortable going in there and cleaning those places out by yourself, call myself or the department, and we can escort you and have somebody stand by while you're doing it. So. Some more things you can do around your house. Fortunately, we have not had a dog killed by a bear this year, but on average, we get about one bear killed dog every year. So please don't leave your dog chained up outside at night. Never stick your dog on a bear. I know it sounds like a good idea to chase the bear away, but it only takes a few moments for that bear to realize, hey, I'm the top of the food chain, and looks around and chases that dog. And where's the dog going to go? He's going to run right after you. Thanks for reducing odors in your garbage can. Double bagging your trash. This is the freezing food items. This is a big one. At my home, we have a separate container for our putrescible waste, all your banana peels and egg shells and fish skins and things that bears would think are spectacular, but we're not going to eat. And we keep those separate. They go in the freezer when that container fills up, and then that bag of frozen stuff goes in the trash can the morning you put a trash can. And that helps reduce the smell significantly. Washing your recyclables, even if so some people don't recycle, they just throw their stuff in the garbage can. It's taco night at your house and you get your refried beans, right? And then your can still has that residual stuff in it. Rinse that out before you throw it in your trash or before you throw it down to the recycling center. We don't want the recycle center to become a bear problem either. I know some people just store their recyclables on the porch or front steps as well. So we don't want that to be an attractant for bears. Again, trash out on the morning pickup only. If nothing else, if we could just do that, it would reduce our bear issues significantly during the time. Clean your garbage can. It's a good time every couple of weeks or so. Just spray out your can. I hear all kinds of theories on on bleach and ammonia and those kind of things. I haven't necessarily from a data-driven viewpoint. Everybody's got their own personal experience with that stuff. I don't necessarily think it's hurts or injures one way or the other. Obviously, if you do it in your can, but I don't necessarily think having a bleach in the can can occur up there if there's that significant amount of calories in that. Again, bird feeders, smokers, your barbecue grills, all those things are potential attractants for bears. Fish and Game has blueprints and plans. If you are savvy, you can build your own enclosure for your garbage can. So if you don't have a shed or a garage, you can still build something that we would consider securing the garage. And have your home, your property, you should defend against any bear. So if you see a bear on your property, have a plan for it. Have an air horn or a whistle, wrist rocket, paintball gun, super soaker full of vinegar, pepper spray, your spotlight or flashlight, even just a pot with a metal spoon, something that you can just make it a bat. Please don't haze brown bears with small caliber firearms. People shoot at bears with 22s or shotguns with birdshot. Those bears usually end up perishing, and so please don't do that. A note on pepper spray. Pepper spray is not a preventative. Don't spray your stuff with bear spray, thinking that's going to keep the bears away. It only works if you specifically spray the bear in the face and gets that bear spray on your membranes. If you spray that bear spray on your garbage can, you're just seasoning your garbage can. It's going to be an attractant. Electric fences, they work. Over and over, studies across the country are showing that these are fairly inexpensive and very effective. This would be, I see this as potentially in addition to our bear ordinance on livestock. I've already. Yeah, electric fence is one of the most foolproof and powerful deterrents available. The good thing about it is it's a passive deterrent, so it's working all the time. You don't have to be there to instill that negative reinforcement on the bear. That fence is going to be on all the time and always working for you. And it's not going to, I've grabbed electric fences before. It hurts, but it doesn't cause any permanent damage. It's not going to cause any permanent damage to the bear or your dog if they accidentally catch it. So highly encourage electric fences, and I'm going to be pushing electric fences a lot more in town as an alternative for people to secure their garbage. I've recently purchased about a half dozen portable electric fences, and those are going to be available for people to borrow on a short-term basis, with the intent that they use it while they're gathering the materials themselves to put up their own permanent electric fence. So you can buy the portable backpacking type kits for they're a little under $300, and you can buy the individual pieces for much cheaper. Some of that stuff is available here in town. There's a lot of resources online for securing that equipment. I put a flyer on the back table. We have a really extensive page on our Fish and Game website on electric fences, construction, maintenance of them, and all kinds of vendors where you can get the equipment. There's lots of creative uses for electric fences. These are just some of the ways that you can use electric fences. We don't have a big fruit tree issue here in Sitka, but we do have a few fruit trees. That's a big driver of the bear issues in canes. They have a lot of apple trees in canes. So if you do have fruit trees, you gotta keep the fruit. You can't just leave it sitting rotting on the ground. That's going to be a big bear property. But all these things can be used with electric fences. Your dog pens. I said don't chain your dogs overnight. But a lot of people have the chain link runs where their dogs live. Electrify everything. Put a fence around it. This time of year, harvesting deer. We're seeing deer hanging from everybody's front porch right now, right? Throw an electric fence around it if you can't. If you don't have a place inside. Outdoor freezers, bad idea here in town. We've already talked about just an empty refrigerators emitting odors that bears are attracted to, and then you fill it full of fish and venison, and it's again just a smorgasbord in bears. Yeah. So the most effective solution to keeping bears away from our human food and garbage. That's the most effective solution to our bear issue. We kill bears as kind of a last resort. And again, the DLP regulations are in effect. 5 AAC 92 is the official state of the last regulation. But I understand there's a lot of caveats that come with DLPs, and there's a lot of considerations. It's not safe for the most part to discharge a firearm in the neighborhood, so you've got to be really careful about that. You've got to have proficiency with your firearm. You have to be aware of shot placement, the correct calibers and bullets for bears. So I don't recommend everybody shooting bears, but it is a tool that is available for people. I do have a friend who shot a black-bearded chicken coop a few years back using general 12-gauge shotgun slugs and you use for deer hunting. He shot the bear went down. When the wildlife trooper came to inspect the scene and grabbed the bear by the hind leg and pull it out of the chicken coop, the bear miraculously came back to life because that's all that slug did was hit it in the head. And that slug just pancaked without any penetration. So it basically just knocked the bear out. So you have to be really careful about the projectiles you got. And obviously, wounding loss is a big deal. We saw that even just within the last week where we have a bear that was apparently shot by somebody. And if you do DLP a bear, we want to know about it immediately. And if you shoot a bear and it doesn't die, please let us know as well, because it's a potentially dangerous situation to have a wounded bear roaming around our neighborhoods. And fish agency officials and staff, we need to know about that so we can try to take care of the situation. So this is the kind of a wrap-up slide on urban stuff. Food conditioned bears associate food with people. Food conditioned bears abandon vital natural food sources for human and associated food and garbage. Human bear conflicts increase when bears target human associated food and garbage in residential areas. And these food conditioned bears in neighborhoods pose a significant risk of injury to bears and people. And garbage kills bears. And so I don't want you to feed bears. I don't want you to do it accidentally. I don't want you to do it intentionally. I don't want you to do it negligently. Keeping bears out of our garbage and our human associated foods is our #1 solution to our bear issues. Please, I'm imploring you, make your household part of the solution, not part of the problem. All right, so looking ahead, some of the things that we're working on. We are going to try to reinstitute the Sitka Bear Task Force. So that was a working group that we've had in the past that included people from the city, Fish and Game, Waste Management, Police Department, working on bear issues and trying to come up with creative solutions to our challenge. We are going to continue to address immediate public safety concerns. There's still a couple of bears we're getting consistent calls on that we may have to remove for public safety reasons. We're going to continue to enforce the city and borough Sitkan ordinance on trash handling, and we're going to continue education. We do have COVID kind of put a damper on some of our in the school programs. We're looking to get potentially next year a more consistent year in, year out bear education program going in our elementary schools. And if we can teach our kids to teach the parents, that might be a better solution than trying to get the parent to change the behaviors. We're going to look at some bear-resistant trash cans. We're going to potentially test drive a couple of models. We've got a really good facility with horses and bear. We've got some bears that are eager to try out these cans, and maybe if we can get funds to do some pilot projects and target some specific neighborhoods that are harder hit than others. Again, we have the electric fence loan program that we're starting at. I put incinerator down here. It's kind of a pie in the sky, probably not going to happen. I know we've had a bad experience with incinerators in the past, but I'm throwing up all the options. I'm just keeping the dialogue open. And there are some really environmentally friendly incinerators now that are actually producing energy for the city and saving the cities a lot of money as well. And then public input. I'm looking for creative solutions. You know, I was on the teleconference with the advisory committee, and one of the members had the idea of booby trapping garbage cans. I've heard that where like at Halloween they have the pop-up spooky guy that comes out of your garbage. You know, so just creative things and just what are the outside the box things that we haven't thought of, but maybe one of you has a good idea that we can use to help haze these bears. And then over and over across the country, I put this pressure on here, is because then that's public pressure on your assembly members and your city administration, because over and over, you know, I can lay all kinds of studies on their desks, but really what has changed, I can't make a city ordinance. I can't say we're going to have a bear-proof fence. That's going to be ultimately a decision that the city makes. And so if they can get input from local people in the community, that's going to be a lot more significant. And it's proven to be significant in other parts of the country, in other cities than agency staff going through. I put this picture up here of this is in Japan. There are some cities there. They bought these remote control robot wolf things and actually solve some of their bear issues. So, you know, kind of a crazy idea. Just to kind of give you that there's ideas out there that we have thought of, lots of ways to address these issues. So kind of wrapping up here, be safe, be smart, be bear smart. Bears are wild animals. I don't want you to fear bears, but they do deserve our respect and should be treated as such at all times. These are all wild bears in these pictures. So I appreciate the guy in the lower left-hand corner, his lack of fear, but at the same time that could go really bad really quickly. And obviously any of those scenarios, those are bad situations that could be in the Sitka Sentinel the next day, right? So, all right, when should you call us? Anytime the animals, if an animal is just displaying natural behavior, I don't need a phone call every time you see a bear. If a bear's you see a bear in the woods eating berries or fishing in the river, I don't need a phone call. That's fine. So is the bear on garbage? If the bear is eating garbage, we probably do need to know that. A lot of when we have to remove a bear for public safety purposes, it's really good to have a paper trail of all the phone calls and all the problems that we've been having with that bear, so we can kind of lay the groundwork for our justification of doing it. If the bear is displaying any kind of defensive behavior, we've killed bears in the past too. I talked about those bear caches before, and a bear, where the bear is storage of garbage that it's collected. And if the bear is defending that, it's a really dangerous situation. We've killed bears off of those caches before. So who do you call? This is kind of obviously 911 if there's an imminent threat to human life. And then of course here's your phone numbers for the police department, troopers. Fish and Game does have online reporting. I do get those reports. And then here's my my contact information. I'm available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, and sometimes on the weekend, depending on the circumstances. But the police department, they have people on 24/7. They're always rolling with their tools. If you call me on Saturday and I'm available, it's still going to take probably an hour by the time I get back to the office, get the tools that I need, and get and respond to the scene. Where if you call the police, they're going to be there within 3 minutes. All right, and I guess this concludes my presentation, and we'll move into question and answer. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we'll see if we got questions. We'll start with the audience here before we go online. Any questions, Rebecca? So the question was, should you put cayenne pepper on your ATV seat to protect it? Again, I would say no. I think you probably just lucked out those couple times, because it's the same as putting pepper spray on your seat. It's actually probably going to be an attractant. Who else? Now you got questions. What's going to happen is I'm going to dismiss you, and then everybody's going to come up and they're going to want to talk to me individually and tell me their stories and ask their questions. So, yeah. The question is mothballs, and I've experienced both. I've had bears that were repelled by mothballs, and I've actually seen bears that were attracted to mothballs. So it's really based on the individual bear. Yep. Right. Yep. 13 bears. Yeah, so the question is of the 13 bears that we've killed in Sitka, what's kind of the distribution of age and sex of the bears? And the answer is it's been really variable. It's been a really wide range of all age and sex classes. I'll also add that I've had the privilege of skinning most, if not all, of those bears. And I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, these bears are desperate. These bears are starving. That's why the bears are here." All of these bears have been really, really fat, really robust, and what I would consider in excellent shape for going into winter hibernation. So I don't necessarily think that the theory that there's some sort of food shortage out there driving them into town. These bears are doing really well. So in the back. I can't read it. The ones that we removed. So the question was where around town were the bears that we've removed, and they've been all over town. Pretty much from near the end of Sawmill Creek Road. We've had one at Sandy Beach. Right in town. It's really been all over. And again, that graph that I threw up, that does not include. That's just in town bears. That doesn't include the DLPs that are happening with the deer hunters out in the woods, or the DLPs that are happening at the fish hatcheries south of town, or on the other side of Baranoff Island. So it's just our 14 miles of road. Other questions? Abby, do we have any online questions?
Did have one question, and it was one attendant asked, "Are bears denning in the park?"
I don't know the question. The question was, are bears denning in Totem Park? And I don't have the answer for that. So yeah, I don't know. It's possible, I guess. Yeah.
That's all so far on the virtual side. We had a couple others, but they were easy and I answered them. So they were just kind of curious about, you know, I just expanded on your attractant comment about how, you know, we always recommend to just play it safe and keep containers as clean as possible because we just don't know what kind of bear you might run into.
Yeah, and again, I do other presentations throughout the year more on bear safety, like what to do if you're hiking, or camping, or hunting, fishing, you know, and so be on the lookout for those presentations and encourage you to attend if possible. But that's not the focus of what we're dealing with tonight.
Steve, we did have a couple other questions.
Okay.
One attendee is asking, what are some guidelines for hanging deer at your property?
You're cutting out a little bit. The guidelines for hazing bears at your property?
Hanging deer.
Oh, hanging deer.
Yes.
Yeah, so guidelines for hanging deer at your property. So again, if you have an electric fence, that's a really good short-term solution. I recommend hanging your deer inside of a secure shed. You're playing roulette, really. If you just hang your deer off your eaves outside on the front porch or whatever, you're taking a risk. So, and I know how difficult it is sometimes to come by those deer. So it's a real heartbreaking when one walks away. So. Are the fences available in town? So the question is there a vendor here in town? There is. True Value has been carrying some equipment. I don't know what their supply is now. And I need to talk to the manager, Spinards and True Value, and let them know I'm going to be pushing more so that they can restock more of those supplies. So I don't know what their current supply or selection stuff is. Are you Oh, what mine being paid? Yeah, the question is how many citations are the police giving out, and are the citations being paid, and is that something we could potentially look at for increasing those fines down the road? I'd say that we are tracking the number of citations that are given. I haven't been tracking. I assume that the police or the courthouse has a way to track whether they're being paid or not. Obviously, we don't want to follow up with people about paying their fines. But I don't personally have those numbers. We do track the number of calls that we get, so we can kind of evaluate from year to year the level of their issues that we're having. I will say though that the number of calls that we're getting has, ever since social media has kind of exploded, we don't get as many calls. People post their bear issues on Facebook and they don't let me know. And so I'm not monitoring this over and over. I'm not monitoring Facebook for your bear situations. So I think it's a great resource for neighbors to kind of tell each other where bears are. But as far as getting some kind of official agency response, you need to call us or our police department. So I'm not talking Facebook. I'm not logging Facebook. Yeah, so the question is has closing the trails at Totem Park had any impact on behavior? Yeah, I think there might be park staff on the line right now. I don't know if Abby, if you can find any of those folks.
I would need to know their name.
I don't know if there's a way for them to wave at you or anything.
There's an emoji, everyone, that you can raise your hand, or you can just chat at me and let me know if that's something that you can talk about. What's the question again, Steve?
There's Mary Miller.
Hi, Steve.
She's the park superintendent.
Great.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mary.
Okay, great. What was the question again, please?
The question, Ms. Miller, was has the closing of the trails in Totem Park had any effect on bear behavior?
Okay, well, I think much like you, we at the park, and I do have our biologist and resource manager and law enforcement, I think are still on the watching the presentation also. Much like you, we're working to figure out with this increase in bear behavior or bear presence, what are the contributing factors and what do we do to get a better handle on the situation? So the trail closures are kind of a recent phenomena. I've lived in Sitka for the better part of 60 years. And I've never experienced anything like this. We were lucky growing up if we ever thought we saw a bear footprint or paw print in the park. And so now this is a kind of a different phenomena, and we're working, like you, for public safety. I've got an obligation to make sure that that people, park users, are safe, and that we do what we can to manage the bear-human interface. So that's an emerging challenge for us, and we're working to take the best approach we can and kind of adjusting where necessary. So we did take the step to temporarily close all of the park trails when we had, after we had several what I think were near miss kind of situations, and that kind of all happened in the period of maybe 2 days, and that's a huge risk that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have things that continue to escalate. But we also have working to increase our park staff presence to be able to let the bears know that there are people there and not to get too comfortable, and have a program to kind of unwind those closures. So currently we have the Totem Loop Trail open. And as we continue to kind of increase and escalate our presence and frequency, we will work to open the rest of the trails. I don't know if folks know, but we do have game cameras and are trying to capture the comings and goings of the various bears. And up until the last couple of years, we had a system where the bears would come in at night and they would leave, early in the morning, and there wasn't that bear-human interaction, and that's changed. And we're going to continue to work with you, Steve. Thank you so much for your support so far, and the Alaska Wildlife Troopers that are helping us, and everyone to kind of pull together and be consistent and work for the benefit of the bears in the community. So thank you.
Okay, Garland, I don't know if you could hear. I had a hard time hearing that, but I know the Facebook folks can hear her answer. Yeah, so you can, if you need that, you can go on our recording tomorrow and catch it. So the short answer for me is there's a lot of speculation, and I don't know the answer to that, and I don't have the authority in the national park, so we're working with the folks there to mitigate variations there. So we'll continue to do so. All right, looks like we're wrapping up here. Folks are heading for the doors. So I think unless we got maybe more questions. Yep, one more.
Just one.
Okay.
Should be maybe a quick question. One individual is wondering, has a bear ever been killed by plastic?
Has a bear ever been killed by plastic? I don't know specifically the answer to that question. I guess they're asking, is a bear being killed by the plastic bags that I'm assuming. You know, a bear may die in the woods somewhere outside of town, and I would never see it. I do know that a few years ago, a bear was killed that had been hazed with rubber bullets. And we found that bear, and we found actually some of those rubber bullets had penetrated the body cavity and actually killed the bear. So,
thank you. And Steve, before you wrap up, I just wanted to pass along that I have had numerous attendees compliment you on your very informative, very frank and honest talk tonight, and what a great job you did of addressing the bear issues in Sitka. And I just want to say great job and thank you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry about the technical issues, and I wish the people on Facebook could have actually seen me during the presentation, but it did work a lot better to roam around the room a little bit.
Well, thanks very much, Steve. And thanks everyone for joining us. This will be available on our YouTube website, on Vimeo, and I will link everything on Instagram and Facebook. So if you follow us there, you'll find it there. If you don't, think about doing that. I send out a lot of information on our social media channels. Have a great evening. Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you, everybody. Yeah.